Hey everybody, uh, my name is Richard. I am in my garage and I am about to start a project that I'm probably not qualified for, but you know what? Screw it. I'm gonna go for it and try to make some closet doors for my basement. Um, for those of you who saw my first video that I've ever made, first, I apologize for how bad the quality was. And this one hopefully will be a little bit better, but I'm not making any promises. In my first video, I actually made a dust collection system for my table saw, which I'm going to be using tonight. So if you happen to catch my first video and were wondering if it works or not, well, you're going to find out right now. And spoiler alert, I have used it. It does work pretty well. Still, drops a little bit of dust, but it's way better than it was. All right, well, with no further ado, I'm going to get my setup here prepped. The first step is going to be planing down the 2x6s that I got from Home Depot this morning. Ideally, I would have a planer for this, and that would make this process probably a lot more smooth and easy and reliable, but I don't have a planer and I don't feel like dropping like, $300 to $500 to buy one. However, if this crashes and burns with the table saw, I do have a neighbor who has a planer, so that's plan B. But I'd really love to do this with all my own tools, so we'll see how we go. All right, I'm gonna get set up here and then get cracking. All right, here we go. So it occurs to me that I kind of dove right in earlier and didn't really give much specificity about what I was trying to do here. So the closet doors that I want to make are actually going to be raised panel doors, meaning I kind of want them to look more or less like most interior doors, except that these look a little fancier and they kind of have more like crisscrossing pieces. I'm just going to do like the outside pattern and have two panels on the inside, one on top and one on the bottom. So the 2x6s that I bought are of course, like the nominal dimensions are 5.5 by 1.5. An inch and a half is pretty thick for a door, and most interior doors are 1.25 inches. So I'm gonna try to shoot for that. I did a little test run yesterday with just some 2x4s to kind of make sure that I could get the design that I wanted. It came out pretty well-ish. I did learn a few things from doing that. Yeah, I'm gonna try to replicate that now, but with 2x6s. And here actually I used this is 3/4 inch plywood, like maple hardwood plywood. But it's not recommended to use plywood for doors, just because you can see here, you can kind of see the different layers, so it just won't look quite as polished. Whereas I'm going to be using MDF for my actual doors for the panels, and that's supposed to route really nicely and smoothly. Haven't actually tried it yet, so that'll be in a later segment of this whole process. Yeah, that should hopefully go smoothly. So as I mentioned, I'm planing down the 2x6s. Got my table saw set up with my little roller at the end to catch the 8-foot pieces, since I'm only one person. What I'm really expecting to happen here, if I'm being honest, is that my table saw will trip my circuit, because that's what has happened most times when I've tried to rip a really high vertical cut. Like I've done a bunch of cuts actually with these ones in particular, which aren't super long 2x4s. I had to cut the sides so it'd be 1/4 inch, and it tripped like 3 times when I was doing these ones. However, that typically happens when your table saw blade is not sharp. So I went ahead and I bought these little sharpening sticks on Amazon and just kind of took 10 minutes and sharpened each of the teeth on my saw. So I'm hoping that might help, but honestly, this wasn't the most expensive table saw to begin with, and it's seen a lot of use. I actually used it to build our deck out back and a lot of other projects since then. So I've gotten my money's worth out of it, but I'm hoping I can, make it last for a little while longer. All right, so with all that being said, I feel like I've set the stage here. I'm gonna go ahead and try this and see what happens. If you see the lights go out, well, you know what happened. And it's nighttime, so if the lights go out, hopefully I can figure out how to turn off this table saw. Or no, you know what? I'll be good, because lights go out, circuit tripped, table saw's off. All right, let's see. Here we go. We're gonna get things rolling. All right, well, I've encountered my first problem. I did not leave enough room between, hang on, let me turn this camera around. There we go. So I've got my table saw here, my workbench here, which is obviously really clean. And I have about 6 feet of space between them for an 8-foot piece of wood. So I'm gonna pause the video and shift my table saw so that I have enough room to feed it in without having the wood at a bad angle. All right, take 2, here we go. Well, tripped the circuit. All right, I'll be back in a minute. All right, so I've got my circuit untripped. However, that's not a great sign because you can see how far I made it in this board right about there. The good news is that's a pretty nice clean cut. But I did have a little bit of an epiphany, which is that the light is obviously on and was on even when the circuit tripped, which means that I have another working circuit in here. So I'm going to try to plug in my table saw to that circuit and see if I can distribute the current being drawn and avoid tripping the circuit like 100 million times while I do this. So let's see. All right, take 3. So, this is going to take a while. Also, unfortunately, as you can see here, I'm going to flip my... well, my dust collection system didn't work super well in this case. And the reason is, and in retrospect, it's a little obvious, the way that this blade cut worked, this entire side of the blade was exposed, which, was as expected. But that meant that the wood that I was cutting was not, in any way blocking the dust from flying out, where normally it would mostly go underneath. This time a lot was going out to the side. So, yeah, I think my dust collection system needs a little work for this particular use case. However, I did get a pretty clean cut except for a few spots on the edge. So I'm gonna have to sand that out when I'm done. But I have to do, let me flip it back around. I'm gonna have to do 3 more cuts for this board and 4 cuts total for every board, because I want a nice clean side on both sides. And whenever you get 2x6, obviously there's like rounding on the edges. And for doors, I want these are gonna be the vertical sides of the door. So I want each side to be nice and clean, which means because my table saw only goes up to 3.5 inches and these are 5.5 inches, I got to do 2 cuts on each side, and so 4 total. So I'm really wishing I had that planer right about now, though who knows, maybe that would be as much of a headache as this. So yeah, I'm probably gonna go off camera and do some of this, not force you guys to watch all of it, but I'll show you what it looks like afterwards. Cool, catch you on a bit. You know what, screw it. I'm gonna record the whole thing for this first piece. I'm gonna do the time lapse thing because the video editing app that I downloaded can do time lapse. and why not? All right, so halfway done with the first board. As you can see, it worked pretty well. I mean, if you look close, you can see I do have saw marks in there, and a few spots where it kind of wiggled. They're a little bit worse, and there's of course a ridge in the middle. I want to just take a second and sand it. I want to see how much work it's going to be to smooth this out. Hopefully, you know, it's only kind of a minute or two per side, but we'll see. All right, well, that took more than a couple of minutes. So yeah, that was a pain in the ass. And I'm definitely thinking about calling up my neighbor with the planer for the remaining 5.5 of these pieces. It did, you know, most of the saw marks came out, but it took a little bit of work. I wish I used to have a 40 grit orbital sander set, but the lowest I have is 80. I was trying to find that there in the middle. In the middle of this board, it seems like it worked pretty well. The ends were where I had more of the issue with the saw blade, you know, kind of wobbling a bit, which makes sense because in the middle it's kind of stabilized by this piece on the far side and me holding it on the front side. So when I'm first feeding it in, it was shaking a little, and when I was getting to the end where I couldn't really hold it quite as well, I was having that issue. But I think I am gonna wrap up for the night here because it's almost midnight, and I was doing this after you know, finishing up my real job, so I gotta get some sleep. But yeah, I'll probably try to knock out 1 or 2 of these a night for the next week or so, and have all of my wood ready to go, or I'm gonna tap out and call my neighbor and get his planer. We'll find out. All right. Well, hope everybody has a good evening wherever you are, and I'll catch you all here tomorrow. Hey, good morning, everybody. It's me. I'm back in my garage workshop here. So I'm taking a quick pause in my table saw planing because, full disclosure, it's not going as well as I would have hoped. Let me show you over here. So the first one I did actually worked okay. But the second one, I got this long groove, and I could show you down here at the bottom. Like, you can see it gets deeper as you get towards the ends of the board. And basically the problem I'm having is it's just hard to hold the 2x6 really still as I'm feeding it through. So any kind of wobbles, the table saw is obviously going to make a notch, and that's not really what you want. Obviously that's why people have a, you know, planer. But I'm not quite ready to give up and admit defeat and call my neighbor and use his planer. So I'm gonna actually try, let me flip this around, putting a plywood fence extension on here. So like this is about 2 inches tall. That's part of my problem because my, you know, 2x6 is like up here. And so it's really easy for it to wobble. And then I'm also, of course, just holding it by hand, feeding it through. So I'm gonna try to set up a little featherboard thing, just kind of, you know, smushing the 2x6 up against my taller fence and see if that will help me get a much more even cut and feed that hopefully will work reliably for the remaining 4 or 5 2x6s. I might have to redo like the second one that didn't work so well. I might just have to scrap or use for like some of the shorter pieces that I need for the horizontal trim parts on the door. But yeah, if that doesn't work, then I'm giving up and calling my neighbor. So, all right, I'm gonna set up my camera. I'm gonna actually show you what I'm doing here since I think it's, you know, kind of interesting. If you don't care about this part, then feel free to fast forward to where I'm actually making the door. All right, here goes. Commence time lapse. take a little break. I had to go foraging in my garage for the right size bolts to put through the fence to hold it. And you know, I feel like I've got a reasonable organization system, but my garage is not as neat as it could be, so it took me a little while. I ended up having to steal one from my router table setup, but I only really need 2, so I had 2 extras over there. So all right, back to time lapse. All right, so let me flip this around. I've got my fence. You can see I had to countersink some holes there so that the screw wouldn't get in the way of the board feeding through, of course. And I had these nice little star bits that fit the diameter of the screw, so that makes it nice and easy to take on and off, though I'll probably just leave it on from here on out. So now the next thing is I want to come up with whatever I'm going to use to featherboard this. I think I'm just going to find like a scrap piece of wood that I can just put here, stick the featherboard on top and just clamp it, not try to over-engineer that part. So we'll see what I come up with here. Alright, so I think this should work. It's not, you know, quite as neat as I might like, but I got it clamped. And this, as you can see now, like this feeds nicely in, and it's really flush. Shouldn't really wobble. I got to adjust the width here because that's not quite right. That's like too far out. Unfortunately, it's almost 10 o'clock. And I have to go work. So I'm going to come back this afternoon and try to start running these through and see if I can get some cleaner cuts. So yeah, I'll catch you later. All right, bye. All right, folks, let's do this. We'll see how we go. I don't want to get too excited here, but that definitely worked a lot better. Check this. Here you can barely see where the ridge is, and it's, you know, like there's a few spots where you can see the saw blade, but that'll sand right out, no problem. Nothing like the big grooves that I was getting, and the edges, like the ends of the boards, look just fine, whereas before the ends were always where like I had these really big grooves cut out where it wasn't staying flush against the fence. Yeah, this worked. I think I'm good. I don't think I need to call my neighbor for his planer. So yeah, I mean, it's just stupid me being stubborn, wanting to do it all with my own tools, but you know what? I can do it all with my own tools. So all right, I'm gonna try to get through as many of these boards as I can before my kid gets home from school, and I actually think I can do it now. And that was so much less stressful than like standing there like trying to hold it perfectly still. My little featherboard thing here, it doesn't look too pretty, but you know what? It worked great. And those boards fed in really nice and smooth. So, all right, I'm gonna keep going. So I figured I'd just explain what I was just messing with real quick. So when I flipped this board around, I noticed that it actually had a little bit of a curve to it, which you can kind of see there. So even with the the featherboard setup I had and with the fence, it could still kind of rock back and forth, which I didn't love, and I was gonna end up with the same issue that I was having before. So I figured, all right, well, I don't care if the board isn't perfectly square. I'd rather it be square, but what I really care about is that the cut is even so that I don't end up with a huge ridge. So in order to do that, I wanted to have this featherboard set up at 2 points so that it wouldn't rock back and forth. So yeah, so I ended up getting another one and just kind of creating a 2-layered featherboard to hold it really steady. So hopefully that works, we'll see. Alright, first board is done. So I did get a little bit of a ridge on this one, again, just because of the curve in the board, which I don't know that there's a whole lot I could have done about that. But it's not too bad, and I can definitely sand that out, and I actually think it'll only take a little while with the orbital sander to get that out. It's just come right off. Yeah. So I'm pretty happy with that, honestly, and I'm gonna forge ahead and try to do the rest of these. Hey everybody. So yeah, unfortunately I ran out of time last Friday. I had to go get my kid. So, you know, it's a new day, new clothes. But I'm gonna try to finish up the rest of these boards. Also, fun fact. So obviously I'm in my garage and I have my door open and there's like all these spiders up here and I'm pretty tall. So like there's one over here. And every time I walk underneath, I'm thinking about like, is one of these spiders gonna just drop into my hair? And I literally saw one drop like 30 seconds ago. So now I'm gonna be, you know, thinking about that every time I walk back and forth. So just thought I'd share because it's on my mind. All right, anyways, I'm gonna put this in my tripod, get going. My wife got home with my son from the doctor, so I had to check in. Also, I just couldn't take the spiders anymore, so I just got my shop vac and cleared them out, and I feel way better now. All right, back to it. All right, well, that's all of them. So the next step is I'm gonna have to spend some time sanding, but here, let me show you. This last board worked really well. Like, you can barely even see a ridge in the middle. Of course, you know, by the end of it, I figured out some tricks. You might have noticed if you watched that whole painful process. The second kind of half of the ripping I was doing, I was pulling it through from this end. That way I could kind of like stabilize it against this side. Sorry, bad camera angle. I could stabilize it against like the back side of the fence So I had my feather board holding the front end, and I could kind of like keep it level on this side. And that definitely helped get a more even cut. Plus, then I wasn't standing right behind the table saw inhaling dust the whole time, which was nice. So that definitely helped get a cleaner cut. I wish I'd figured that out in the beginning. But what can you do? And overall, I think it worked pretty well. Do have to spend a bit of time sanding out all the grooves, but then I'll be ready to go and actually make some doors. So yeah, thanks for sticking with me this far. And just, bear with me a little longer and I'll actually start using my router table. All right, gonna start sanding. Hey everybody. All right, so I'm finally ready to build these doors. It's actually been like weeks since I did all of the work with the planing of the edge boards, but things have been busy. So I'm finally back to it. So I think I should actually show you what I'm trying to make here. So this is the design that I'm going for. So it's kind of shaker style doors, I think is what it's called. And so it's just going to be, for one of these doors, like 2 raised panels, top and bottom, not as fancy as, like typical interior doors, because that's too much work and I don't really want it to look like that anyways. So I'm going to be using these router bits that I got on Amazon. Let's see, it's this set here, if anybody is interested. Yonico Industrial Router Bits. And so it's a 3-piece set. One of the pieces is already in here. And that one does the bevel on the edge here. And then, of course, the other bit does the negative of that. So you can see here, that's this, which lets me fit these together, which I could do if I had 2 hands. There you go. And so it actually fits really nicely. And so the borders, I'll want to have that bevel on the inside. The interior pieces here, I'll want to have it on both top and the bottom. And then at these joining points, I'll have to have the negative router bit on there. One thing probably worth noting, so I didn't want to fork out for like the, couple $100 bits. So these are actually cabinet router bits. And I had to do a little bit of experimenting with this, but I actually am going to make them work to do, like symmetrical patterns on both sides, which is kind of what I got going on here. Now they're not, so they're not actually designed for that. So in order to do that, I have to unscrew this top knot here and take off the top piece for the backside. Otherwise, this groove blade here would mess up my pattern. So I'll show you what I'm doing as I'm doing it and kind of explain it a little better. But the point is doing this on a budget, and so I think I'm actually going to be able to get a good result with just the cabinet router bits that I think I spent like $50 for the set, which felt pretty reasonable for what I'm trying to do here. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to get going. Kind of excited to actually start making these doors. All right, here we go. So as you can see here, actually, let's see, we can get a better close-up. So that actually worked pretty well. I'm definitely gonna probably get better at this as I go. And if you look inside, you can see there's definitely some places where it wobbled. I chose not to use a featherboard for this because it honestly just kind of made it harder. I felt like I could just slide it with my rollers on either side and just hold it in place. So that's what I'm doing, but it meant I got a few wobbles. But honestly, that worked pretty well. And the nice thing is the blade marks are on the inside of the groove. So unlike the table saw, I don't have to sand them out. They're just hidden. And if any look particularly bad, I'll just, put in a little bit of wood filler or something before I finish everything up. So all right, that's the first side. I'm gonna run through all 4 of my outer boards for like the kind of vertical frames. Do the top side so that they're all exactly consistent, and then I'll flip them over, take off that top piece, and do the reverse side, which I'll explain when I get there. So onward. so I've got the first 4 done. Check this out. Nice even grooves all the way down. Those are the outside ones for door number 1 on the left, and the grooves for door on the right. So now, as you can see here, like there's nothing on this side. So that's the next step, is to do the reverse groove here. And so in order to do that, I'm going to take the nut off of this guy, take this piece off, which does the groove. And so all that I'll be left with is this piece on the bottom, which is going to do the curved part, but without cutting a groove. And that way it won't matter that the thickness of my door is thicker than, like the cabinet door that these router bits are designed for. So I'll just get this curve on the bottom here, and I'll have a thicker width here than like what I've got here, but it won't mess up my groove. Because if I left on the groove cutter thing, then I'd get another groove cut like here, and my groove would be way too wide. Yeah, I'm gonna go ahead and do that. All right, so I'm gonna show you here real quick. So as you can see, I took the top piece off. That's this guy. It's a little warm because I just did a lot of cutting. So this previously sat right on top. Oh, sorry, sat right on top. So now it's gone, which means all I'm gonna get is the curved bit on the bottom. So yeah, I'm gonna put this back in my router table. The other sides. So figured I'd just show you what this looks like. So as you can see here, like the width of the curve here is definitely different on the 2 sides, which was as expected. And that's because that's why I took off the groove cutter here. So now you can I'll be able to use the negative piece, or actually sorry, this is the raised panel bit here. So this will cut out a nice raised panel with a groove that exactly matches. Or I guess it's technically called a tongue, probably like the tongue that matches this groove. And I don't really care what the backside looks like because it's in the back and it still looks fine. I think it's still got a nice curve to it. Honestly, if I were doing it again, maybe I'd put the bigger curve on the front. But whatever. I can always flip everything around. So I guess I can still make up my mind about that. Anywho, all right. On to the next one. Alright, so I've done the outer bits, the outer frame pieces, but I still got to do the pieces that go in the middle. These pieces. Whoop. See that? Yeah, like the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 pieces. So doing those now, and then start cutting up some boards and putting them together. Alright. All right, new night, new clothes. Didn't finish last night. It was like 12:30 or 1 or something by the time I stopped, so had to call it. But I'm back in my garage and I'm ready to cut. Got my miter saw out, so now I'm actually going to cut things down to the lengths that I need. I didn't do the router cuts for the ends of these interior boards, which are like the negatives of the ones that I did last night. So once I cut down the pieces to the shorter lengths, I'll do those. It's a lot harder to do the end routing bits when the board's 8 feet long because I have to turn it perpendicular to the router table. So I figure I'll cut it first and then, and I obviously have to cut it to do the router cuts on both ends anyways. So yeah, about to start cutting. And then I can actually start putting these things together. I got my MDF boards over there. So depending on how things go tonight, I might even cut those down with my table saw to the right dimensions here and do the raised panel bit and get that set up. So yeah, things are starting to come together. Exciting times. Here we go. All right, so these boards are the correct height now, so that's cool. Now I got to do the little middle pieces. So those are the easy ones. Now I got to do some like pretty precise cuts here to get pointing the camera the wrong way, to get the doors the actual correct width. And then the fun part will be measuring the widths for the panels, which have to include the actual groove depth. So hopefully I won't mess that up. But yeah, making progress. Okay, so I'm actually at the complicated part right now, which I just realized as I was starting to measure the interior pieces. And the reason is, so I need my doors to be in total 47.5 inches wide. That's going to include 3/4 inch trim board on either side to help me deal with the trim on the baseboards. So then I take off 1.5 inches from that, so I'm down to 46 inches. I want to leave 1/8 of an inch on either side and in the middle to help the doors open and close. So that brings me down another 3/8 of an inch, which means in total I want each door to be exactly 22 inches and 13/16, which is pretty precise. But that obviously includes the width of the exterior boards that I was just working on. So I need to figure out how to cut these middle boards, which is not as simple as just, 22 and 13/16 minus 5.5 times 2. And the reason is, if you look at this, let's see if I can do this. So I need to cut this. Well, that didn't work. Here, let me show you the edge here. So the furthest out point on this is the tongue of this groove right there. So I need to be factoring into account the depth of this groove. So basically I need to subtract out whatever the width is from, can't really hold the phone and do this, from there to the edge. So I need to measure that, multiply that by 2 and take that off my 22 and 13/16. And then when I cut this, the middle piece to the right width, that'll basically be from the tip of the tongue on either side. So it's a little bit fiddly, just wanted to point that out. That you have to take into account the grooves, or else you're gonna end up with some miscut boards. So I think I've got that sorted. I just gotta actually do the measurements now, and then I'll get to cutting. All right, so I got 5 of these, and the heights look pretty good, I think. And I landed on 12 and 1/16. Here, let's see, I'll show you my math here. So I measured from the edge here right to the edge of the groove. That was 5 and 1/16 exactly. So that times 2 is 10 and 2/16. Plus 12 and 11/16 gets me to 22 and 13/16. So that's what I was shooting for these. We'll see how it looks when I put it all together. Hopefully I didn't mess up how this whole tongue and groove thing is going to work. I did one extra in case I, mess one of these up as I'm doing it. I've still got a little extra of this piece and a whole extra one over there. That was my worst one, but so if things go really badly, I've still got that, ace up my sleeve. So yeah, I've got to cut. So those 4 pieces with one extra give me 1, 2, 3, 4. So now I got to do the middle 2 Probably do an extra one of those too, since I have a whole board for that over there. And then I'm ready to start doing the router bits, router cuts on the edges of these pieces. So yeah, we're getting there, getting there. All right, here we go. All right, so I got the first side of all of these pieces routed for like the negative part. That's this part right here, and now I got to do the same thing you did with the other router bit. Take the top off and cut the curved part on the other side. So halfway there with these short pieces, and then I think that's where I'm stopping for the night, because it is time is it 12:40. Oh, it's only 12:20. All right, maybe I can go a little longer. Alright, so I'm about to actually start making my panels, and then I think I can put one of these doors together, which is pretty exciting for me. Figured I'd show you what this looks like first. So this is the frame of one of the doors. I'm kind of low on space in here, so I can only do one at a time. But yeah, I'm pretty happy with it. And so the panels are going to be 1, 2 right in the middle. I've got my MDF board as my first piece, so I'm cutting that down to the right width. Again, for anybody who might try this, make sure you're accounting for the depth of the grooves when you're measuring the width of the board, because it's about, so what I figured out is, like, looking at this beveled edge, it's about 1/8 of an inch further in than that, so that made it easy to measure. But yeah, so I'm gonna cut this down with my table saw, and then I'm gonna route the edges with the raised panel bit, which I'll show you when I get there, and see if I can actually have a door by the time my son gets home. So here we go. So that was way easier than doing the 2x6s, which was nice. Just went through like butter. So now the challenge that I gotta figure out what I'm gonna do about is, so let me show you these boards. So those are my pieces. They're cut to the right width, but I need to get them to the right length to fit in this spot. They're about 4 feet, and I need to cut them down to 38 and change inches. And my table saw is not, you know, contractor grade full table saw. So I'm trying to decide the easiest way to, you know, do a cut that's just kind of like 12 inches or 10 inches or something down. I could use a circular saw and try to like create a, you know, like a guide for it. I could try to freehand it on this thing, which I don't feel great about. I've got a table saw jig that I could set up that might help me feed it through levelly, so maybe I'll try to do that. But I don't know, this is gonna be a little bit dicey. So I'm gonna pause the video and figure out my, my next steps. All right, I figured it out. So I'm gonna use the table saw. I've got enough, you know, table saw space here where, you know, like if I lay it up flat horizontally, I can kind of support it. And I'm gonna use this jig, feeding it through to kind of keep it nice and perpendicular, because otherwise doing that by hand would be a little bit tricky. But I think this will work, so wish me luck. All right, so I've got my 2 panels. That worked pretty well. I'm happy with that. So now I'm going to set up my router table, put in my raised panel bit, which I'll go ahead and show you. This guy is quite a large router bit. It's a little scary when it gets going on the router table, I'll be honest. But you can kind of see the design there. So this part on top is the back, this is the front. That gives you that nice shape. Let's see if I can find, oh, it's right here, nice. Just to show you what this looks like. Looks like that, and from the side, so that's the shape that we're going for, except with MDF instead of plywood. I'm going to move this outside just because it will kick up a lot of dust, and MDF dust is not something I want to be inhaling. All right, I'm going to pause here and get set up, and then, yeah, hopefully get one of these doors done. All right, so I got my router bit on there. One thing I figured I'd just point out, you have to adjust the depth of the back here, so that you get a clean line with the feeding part and the little rolling wheel in there. You can kind of see there's a wheel in the back there, which your piece, you know, that's kind of the backstop for your router bit. And so if that was not positioned correctly with this board, you would not get an even cut. And it would also mess up my measurements. So I just used, you know, like a little right angle thing to make sure that the backstop was aligned with the router bit. So I'm ready to go. Try to do all four sides at once. Whoops. And yeah, hopefully I'll have two panels ready to go pretty quickly. Let's see how we go. That's kind of terrifying, not gonna lie. So, I made a mistake. So this is what this looks like. Now, when I was doing my practice run earlier, let's see what this looks like. This is kind of more what I was going for. But I forgot that this raised panel thing can work for up to, I think, like an inch. So I've set it up too high here, and so this top part here didn't really do anything, unfortunately. It really just was all the bottom part. So I have a really nice curve on that, the outer part of the panel, and I got to decide if I like that, because, you know, I obviously want it to be consistent across all of them, or if I want to scrap this panel and do another one and adjust the depth. And I'm leaning towards the latter, but unfortunately that means I'm going to have to get another, you know, big MDF panel board because I only have the 4. And in retrospect, I'm pretty dumb because I have these practice, like the extra bits that I could have done a really quick, easy sample test run on, and I didn't. So I'm kicking myself for that. So anyways, that's irritating, but what can you do? Move on. So I think I do want to adjust it so that I have the shape on both sides. I just think it'll look nicer, and otherwise it'll bother me forever. So I'm gonna do the second panel since I've got my router table set up, but then I'm gonna cut down some more of those panels over there and have a redo. Yeah, okay, so I did a test cut this time, and that looks way better. Like, that's definitely much more what I'm going for, and now, like, the panel is, like, slightly recessed from the main part, which is kind of what I wanted, and then there's still a little bit of a pattern on the back, which I just think looks nicer. So, that's what we're gonna do. Oh well. Hey y'all, so I've got the pieces cut for my my first door. I did a dry fit, looks pretty good. I don't have time to finish cutting the pieces for the second door. I still need to split that panel over there and route the edges. So we're gonna do that next session, but I want to get one of these doors made, so I got half an hour before I got to go get my kid. I'm gonna glue this door and clamp it, and hopefully it all works. So wish me luck. Here we go. Alright, so I actually now have 2 doors completed. Like a little bit of work off camera because I'm actually running out of room on my phone. So wanted to kind of hustle this along and get it done. But you can see I've got these doors glued and clamped. Got my second one over there. I'm running out of room in my garage with my router table and my table saw and everything else. So I had to do a little bit of Tetris to get everything in here. But yeah, so I'm actually pretty happy with the way they turned out. I'm just hoping when I unclamp them that I put enough glue in and that they hold together. So we'll see how that goes. But yeah, I think I'm gonna actually wrap this video up because it's getting pretty long. So I'll do a part 2 where I install them. I'm obviously gonna paint them because just straight up wood in the basement would probably, I mean, it might look okay depending on your tastes, but my wife does not like that. So, but yeah, thanks for so far. And yeah, more to follow. But yeah, I think we're almost there. All right, take care, guys. Bye. All right, so the doors are in. Let me show you what they look. Oh, let's step back because they're tall. So those are the doors. Declan, you want to open one for me? Prove to everyone that they work. Yeah, look at that. We got all our toys in there. And then close them up for me again. Yeah. Close them for me, Declan. Yeah. Declan, can you close the doors for me, please? So, these are raised panel, I think shaker style, mainly just raised panel doors. So you can see you got the 2x6 bits that run floor to ceiling. You got the panels in the middle. The joints here, I had to add some Bondo wood filler to kind of make them look really nice and flush and sand them down a little bit. Let me just point out a few things. Watch out, buddy. So I used little magnetic backstop. I have ball bearing hinges on the top and bottom. Rather than trying to mount to the side using kind of more traditional door hinges, this just seemed a little simpler. The one issue that I did run into, yeah, hold on, buddy. The one issue I did run into is that the door frame turned out to not be perfectly square. So that would be one thing that I would suggest to be careful of if you were trying something like this for yourself. In retrospect, I wish I had taken a little more time to frame the door frame, like with some additional 2x4s or something, and get it really nice and square. Because then it meant that when I went to install my doors, I had to do some shenanigans to make them fit. Like they weren't totally lining up. So I actually added a little kind of shim on top to make them perfectly even. But it all worked out. The other thing is, so I used these hinges. That actually added some additional height to the doors, so I had to cut the doors down once I was trying to install them. Nothing too hard, but it was a little bit annoying. But anyways, I got them installed. They're working. I'm pretty happy with them. So yeah, Declan's pretty happy too. He's my little helper, so it's nice that we got to do this together. Thanks for sticking with me through this whole video. And yeah. If you liked it, I'll try to keep posting videos of my home projects as I get through them. So check out the rest of my stuff. All right, take care, everybody. Bye. Oh, you want to say bye?